In the summer of 1540, the architect of England's most transformative era, a figure second only to the king himself, would witness his meticulously constructed world crumble into ruin within a matter of days. Thomas Cromwell, once a humble blacksmith's son who ascended to the earldom of Essex and became Henry VIII's indispensable chief minister, stood on the precipice of a devastating truth. Proximity to absolute power is often more perilous than obscurity. His narrative remains a stark and chilling reminder that in the treacherous landscape of the Tudor court, today's most valued advisor could become tomorrow's condemned traitor, a chilling testament to the capricious nature of royal favor. The man who orchestrated the downfall of Cardinal Wolsey, masterminded Henry's audacious break from Rome, and dispatched countless souls to their deaths, would soon confront the same brutal machinery of Tudor justice he had so diligently helped to perfect, a grim twist of fate that underscores the ruthless realities of the era. What renders Cromwell's demise particularly haunting is not merely its abruptness, but the calculated cruelty with which it was orchestrated by the very monarch he had served with unwavering loyalty and unparalleled effectiveness. Thomas Cromwell's unlikely ascent to power began in the humblest of circumstances. Born around 1485 in Putney, the son of a blacksmith and brewer, young Thomas sought his fortune on the volatile continental markets and battlefields after a violent quarrel with his father prompted his hasty departure from England. His formative years spent in Italy exposed him to the ruthless political strategies espoused by Machiavelli and the intricate financial systems that would later prove invaluable in the tumultuous atmosphere of Henry's court. Returning to England, a man of considerable wealth and influence, Cromwell entered the service of Cardinal Wolsey in the 1520s. His keen legal mind and profound grasp of both canon and civil law made him an indispensable asset during the intricate negotiations surrounding Henry's relentless pursuit to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. When Wolsey tragically fell from grace in 1529, Cromwell skillfully distanced himself from his former mentor, simultaneously positioning himself as indispensable to the king, a testament to his political acumen and strategic brilliance. By 1532, Cromwell had risen to become Henry's principal secretary, and his influence expanded exponentially. He was the driving force behind the English Reformation, not driven by fervent religious zeal, but by pragmatic political considerations. The break with Rome resolved Henry's pressing matrimonial issues while simultaneously replenishing the royal coffers with the vast wealth seized from confiscated monasteries. Cromwell's methodical approach to dismantling centuries of entrenched religious tradition showcased both his extraordinary administrative genius and his utter lack of sentimentality, solidifying his reputation as a force to be reckoned with. His methods were as breathtakingly efficient as they were undeniably ruthless. Cromwell maintained an extensive and sophisticated network of informants throughout England, effectively creating what the esteemed historian Hilary Mantel aptly described as the first modern intelligence service. He understood with unwavering certainty that information equated to power, and he wielded both with devastating effectiveness, ensuring his dominance in the treacherous political landscape. Those who dared to oppose the king's radical religious policies found themselves facing accusations of treason, frequently supported by evidence meticulously cultivated by Cromwell's ever-vigilant agents, underscoring the reach and power of his intelligence apparatus. The dissolution of the monasteries, which Cromwell orchestrated with military precision between 1536 and 1541, epitomized his distinctive approach to governance. Ancient religious houses that had stood for centuries were systematically stripped of their wealth, their valuable lands redistributed to Henry's loyal supporters, and their inhabitants cast out with minimal compensation. This operation, executed with unwavering precision, generated immense wealth for the crown while simultaneously dismantling a fundamental pillar of medieval English society, leaving an indelible mark on the nation's social and religious fabric. Cromwell's elevation to the earldom of Essex in 1540 appeared to represent the zenith of his remarkable success. He had weathered the storm of the Pilgrimage of Grace rebellion, skillfully navigated the intricate political machinations surrounding Henry's tumultuous marriages, and amassed a personal fortune that rivaled that of the ancient nobility. Yet his very success had inevitably created formidable enemies who lurked in the shadows, patiently awaiting any sign of vulnerability, knowing that even the mightiest oak can be felled. The inherent paradox of Cromwell's powerful position was that his immense influence depended entirely on the shifting sands of royal favor, yet that same influence made him a prime target for those who deeply resented his humble origins and his radical, transformative policies. The traditional nobility, gradually displaced by this audacious commoner, bided their time, patiently waiting for an opportune moment to strike and bring him crashing down. They understood that Henry's favor was as fickle as the wind, and they meticulously positioned themselves to capitalize on Cromwell's inevitable fall from grace. His well-deserved reputation for ruthlessness, while undeniably instrumental in his dramatic rise to power, also meant that he could expect little mercy when his fortunes eventually turned. The same legal mechanisms he had so readily employed to destroy others would inevitably be turned against him, operated by men who had learned their craft by closely observing his own methods, a grim testament to the cyclical nature of power and revenge. In the brutal, unforgiving world of Tudor politics, Cromwell had undeniably made himself indispensable, but in doing so, he had also made himself profoundly friendless. The seeds of Cromwell's downfall can be traced back to a single, fateful, diplomatic miscalculation that would ultimately prove catastrophic. In his zealous pursuit to secure Henry's fourth marriage and forge a crucial Protestant alliance with the German princes, Cromwell negotiated the king's betrothal to Anne of Cleves without adequately ensuring Henry's personal approval of the prospective bride. The marriage, hastily contracted in late 1539, was politically advantageous but personally disastrous for the king, marking a turning point in Cromwell's fortunes. When Henry first laid eyes on Anne of Cleves in January 1540, his reaction was immediate and devastating, casting a long shadow over Cromwell's future. The king, who had been led to believe in Anne's beauty based on Holbein's flattering portrait, instead encountered a woman he deemed plain and utterly unsuitable. Henry's infamous description of Anne as a Flanders mare reflected not only his personal disappointment, but also his rapidly growing resentment toward the minister who had so confidently arranged the ill-fated match. The political ramifications of Henry's profound marital dissatisfaction extended far beyond mere personal preference. The marriage represented a firm commitment to the Protestant German princes at a critical juncture when Henry was actively reconsidering his foreign policy options. The Catholic powers of Europe, particularly the formidable Emperor Charles V, were offering enticing alternatives that would necessitate abandoning the Protestant alliance that Cromwell had so carefully and painstakingly constructed, placing him in an increasingly precarious position. Cromwell found himself trapped in an impossible situation, torn between his unwavering commitment to the vital German alliance and his urgent need to satisfy the king's growing desire to extricate himself from his unwanted marriage. His frantic attempts to discover legal grounds for annulment were further complicated by the meticulous thoroughness with which he had negotiated the original marriage contract, a cruel irony that underscored the complexity of his predicament. The very political framework he had so diligently created to support the match now served as a formidable obstacle to dissolving it, highlighting the unforeseen consequences of even the most carefully laid plans. The king's increasing dissatisfaction with his marriage became inextricably intertwined with broader questions about the direction of religious policy. Conservative nobles, led by the astute Duke of Norfolk, began advocating for a reconciliation with Catholic Europe and a reversal of some of Cromwell's more radical reforms, subtly undermining his authority. They shrewdly argued that Cromwell's aggressive Protestant policies had effectively isolated England and created unnecessary enemies among the traditional European powers, playing on Henry's fears of isolation. Henry's growing attraction to Catherine Howard, Norfolk's youthful and captivating niece, provided the conservative faction with a powerful weapon against Cromwell. The enticing possibility of a fifth marriage offered Henry both personal gratification and invaluable political flexibility, but it crucially required removing the significant obstacles that Cromwell's policies had created. The minister, who had once seemed indispensable, now appeared to be the primary impediment to the king's personal happiness and political maneuvering, marking a dramatic shift in his standing. Cromwell's response to this multifaceted crisis revealed both his remarkable political acumen and his ultimate vulnerability. He desperately attempted to orchestrate Anne of Cleves' willing agreement to an annulment, while simultaneously striving to maintain his waning influence over religious policy, walking a tightrope between competing interests. However, his shrewd enemies had meticulously learned from his own methods, and they began skillfully building a case against him, employing the same techniques he had ruthlessly used against countless others, signaling the beginning of the end. The astonishing speed with which Cromwell's position deteriorated reflected the inherently precarious nature of political power within Henry's volatile court. Within mere months of being elevated to the prestigious earldom, he found himself facing grave accusations of heresy and treason from men who had previously deferred to his authority, a stark reminder of the fleeting nature of power and influence. The very efficiency of the governmental system he had so painstakingly created now worked against him, as his enemies skillfully used his own administrative methods to meticulously document his alleged crimes, turning his own strengths into his ultimate weakness. The elaborate plot against Thomas Cromwell was orchestrated with the same methodical precision that had characterized his own dramatic rise to power, a fitting testament to the skills he had inadvertently imparted to his adversaries. The Duke of Norfolk, representing the powerful conservative Catholic faction, fully recognized that Cromwell's downfall required far more than mere royal displeasure. It demanded a carefully constructed legal case that would convincingly justify the extreme punishment his party sought to inflict upon him, ensuring the permanence of his demise. Norfolk's sophisticated strategy centered on cleverly exploiting Henry's growing paranoia about religious orthodoxy and unwavering personal loyalty. The Duke shrewdly understood that accusations of heresy would resonate deeply with a king who had devoted years to defining himself as the staunch defender of true religion against both the perceived excesses of papal authority and the perceived dangers of Protestant extremism. By artfully portraying Cromwell as a secret radical who had cunningly manipulated royal policy for his own ideological purposes, Norfolk could effectively transform the king's personal irritation into a righteous fury, sealing Cromwell's fate. The conservative faction began meticulously gathering evidence of Cromwell's extensive correspondence with prominent Protestant reformers across Europe, paying particular attention to his communications with the more radical elements within German Lutheran circles. Letters that had once been interpreted as prudent diplomatic intelligence gathering were now cleverly reinterpreted as damning evidence of treasonous conspiracy, twisting his own words against him. Cromwell's vast network of Protestant contacts, previously regarded as valuable assets, suddenly became irrefutable proof of his dangerous religious sympathies, further fueling the king's suspicions. Stephen Gardiner, the influential conservative Bishop of Winchester, played a pivotal role in meticulously developing the theological case against Cromwell. Gardiner had long deeply resented Cromwell's significant influence over religious policy and saw the minister's current vulnerability as an unprecedented opportunity to reassert clerical authority over the direction of the English Church, capitalizing on his misfortune. His formidable scholarly reputation lent considerable credibility to the accusations that Cromwell had actively promoted heretical doctrines that directly contradicted the king's own deeply held theological preferences. The carefully orchestrated timing of the conspiracy was meticulously coordinated with Henry's passionate infatuation with the captivating Catherine Howard. Norfolk astutely understood that his niece's undeniable influence over the king created a unique window of opportunity to strike at Cromwell, while Henry was emotionally vulnerable and politically distracted, maximizing their chances of success. Catherine's youthful beauty provided a stark and compelling contrast to the perceived inadequacies of Anne of Cleves, effectively reinforcing Henry's growing sense that Cromwell had deliberately deceived him about the German marriage, solidifying his resolve to eliminate the perceived threat. Contemporary observers keenly noted the sudden palpable change in atmosphere at court as news of the unfolding plot spread rapidly through hushed whispers and meaningful glances. Courtiers who had previously actively sought Cromwell's favor began distancing themselves from the embattled minister, recognizing the unmistakable signs of an impending fall from grace. The very same political instincts that had propelled many of them to prominence now urgently warned them to abandon their former patron before his inevitable destruction engulfed them as well, underscoring the self-serving nature of courtly life. Cromwell himself appears to have been initially tragically unaware of the full extent of the elaborate conspiracy that was rapidly closing in around him. His unwavering confidence in his own perceived indispensability blinded him to the meticulous preparations of his increasingly powerful enemies, and his intense focus on managing the immediate crisis of the royal marriage tragically prevented him from recognizing the broader existential threat to his carefully constructed position. This fatal oversight would prove to be utterly devastating in the ruthless and unforgiving environment of Henry's court. The final pieces of the intricate plot were carefully put into place during the spring of 1540 as Norfolk and his dedicated allies prepared to formally present their meticulously crafted case to the king. They had meticulously assembled what they believed to be sufficient evidence of Cromwell's heretical beliefs and treasonous communications, and they had successfully secured the unwavering support of key court officials who would be absolutely necessary to implement their carefully devised plan. All that remained was the crucial task of choosing the optimal moment to spring their carefully prepared trap, ensuring maximum impact and minimizing any chance of escape. The morning of June 10, 1540 began like any other for the unsuspecting Thomas Cromwell. As Lord Privy Seal and the recently created Earl of Essex, he dutifully attended the regular council meeting at Westminster, engaging in routine discussions of state matters with his fellow councillors. Nothing in his outward demeanor suggested any awareness of the impending catastrophe that was about to irrevocably unfold, though some astute observers would later claim to have detected an unusual tension permeating the room, a subtle premonition of the impending doom. The carefully laid trap was sprung with devastating suddenness and shocking efficiency. In the midst of the council proceedings, the Duke of Norfolk dramatically rose from his seat and began solemnly reading formal charges of treason and heresy against the utterly bewildered Cromwell. The comprehensive accusations alleged that the Earl had actively promoted heretical doctrines, maintained treasonous correspondence with England's foreign enemies, and deliberately deceived the king about matters of vital importance to the very security of the realm, leaving no room for doubt. Cromwell's initial reaction was one of stunned disbelief and utter shock. The man who had so expertly orchestrated similar scenes against countless others now found himself the helpless target of the same legal machinery he had diligently helped to perfect, a cruel twist of fate. His desperate attempts to defend himself against the sudden onslaught were swiftly cut short as Norfolk commanded the guards to immediately arrest him, leaving him no recourse. The sheer speed of the proceedings left absolutely no opportunity for the elaborate legal maneuvering that had characterized Cromwell's own prosecutions of his numerous enemies, ensuring his utter helplessness. The overt symbolism of the arrest was deliberately calculated to maximize the humiliation of the fallen minister, serving as a stark warning to any who might consider challenging the king's authority. The prestigious Garter insignia recently bestowed upon him as England's highest honor was unceremoniously stripped from his person in full view of the assembled council, a public declaration of his disgrace. His staff of office was broken and cast aside, and his ceremonial sword was forcibly removed, traditional gestures that definitively marked his complete fall from grace and his sudden transformation from esteemed peer of the realm to common prisoner, underscoring the swift and brutal nature of his demise. Contemporary accounts vividly describe the stunned silence that followed Cromwell's unexpected arrest. Counselors who had worked closely with him for many years sat frozen in their seats, paralyzed by fear that any outward show of sympathy might be interpreted as complicity in his alleged crimes, highlighting the pervasive atmosphere of fear and suspicion. The atmosphere in the chamber was described as oppressively heavy, filled with the stark recognition that the most powerful man in England, second only to the king himself, had just been reduced to a helpless prisoner in a matter of mere minutes, a testament to the capricious nature of power. The physical act of placing Cromwell in chains carried particular symbolic significance within the context of Tudor political culture. Chains were far more than mere restraints. They were potent symbols of profound disgrace, traditionally reserved for common criminals rather than peers of the realm. By ordering that Cromwell be chained immediately, Norfolk ensured that his public humiliation would be complete and unequivocally visible to all who witnessed his swift removal from the council chamber, leaving no doubt about his utter disgrace. News of the shocking arrest spread rapidly throughout London with remarkable speed, creating an immediate sensation among both the members of the court and the general populace, demonstrating the intense public interest in his fate. Citizens who had watched Cromwell's dramatic rise with a complex mixture of admiration and resentment now gathered expectantly in the streets to witness his equally dramatic fall. The sheer speed of the transformation from the pinnacle of power to utter powerlessness served as a stark and unforgettable reminder of the inherently precarious nature of political fortune in the often unforgiving world of Henry's England. The profound psychological impact on Cromwell himself appears to have been utterly devastating. Witnesses described him as appearing aged and broken as he was led away in chains. The once confident and assured administrator replaced by a confused and frightened man who seemed utterly unable to fully comprehend the magnitude of his sudden reversal, a testament to the psychological toll of his ordeal. The systematic destruction of his carefully constructed persona began with his public arrest and would continue relentlessly throughout his agonizing imprisonment and predetermined trial. So, as we've seen, the story of Thomas Cromwell serves as a powerful, if chilling reminder that even the most brilliant minds and dedicated servants can fall victim to the unpredictable tides of power, especially in a court as volatile as Henry VIII's. His rise and fall underscores the precarious nature of influence and the devastating consequences of a single misstep in a world where loyalty could be as fleeting as a king's mood. It's a dramatic tale of ambition, betrayal, and the ultimate price of playing the Game of Thrones. What did you think of Cromwell's story? Did anything particularly resonate with you? Or perhaps leave you with questions? I'd love to hear your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. Feel free to share your insights, ask anything you're curious about, or just join the conversation. I'm always eager to hear what you all think. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Tudor history and want to explore more stories of intrigue, power, and the figures who shaped our world, be sure to subscribe. That way, you won't miss out on future videos exploring similar fascinating events and personalities. Thanks for watching.